Okay, I'm going to get started here. I think everyone's in the room. Just want to thank everyone for signing up for my session today and for showing up. I think hopefully I'm going to be able to explain a little bit about what the VDC process is and provide some examples on how we use it on some of our EllisDon projects. And just like a little bit about me, I've been with EllisDon for almost 9 years now, working in our VDC group. I think there was only about 4 or 5 of us at that time in 2011. And I think we're about 40 or 50 people company-wide now. And I started as a VDC coordinator on a small data center project. And now I am managing our Ottawa and Atlantic Canada regions, doing training and implementation on more of a corporate level. So, so I want to get started, and I usually like to kind of bring some context into, what BIM is and why we use it. And I'm sure some of the people here already know that, but there may be some few others that are new to the concept and the process. So I kind of want to tell the story about where this all came from. And so, I know, most people have probably seen a graph similar to this, but it is essentially depicting how the construction industry and the manufacturing industry have sort of converged or diverged over time in productivity per man hour. Manufacturing has gotten more efficient with automation and digitization, and construction industry has sort of lagged behind. So this is kind of where we're at now. And another sort of graph, it's not that important to read all the information, but what this is saying is an index of digitization per sector, whether it be IT, finance, mining, real estate, and down at the bottom is construction. So what it's saying is that construction has not adopted digital tools or technology over the last decade or so. And this is part of the reason why we're not seeing the efficiencies of the other sectors. So when we look at, let's say, the manufacturing sector, basically you have your design, and you perfect that design in a 3D environment, and then you execute that design in a fabrication type setting, so you can build very efficiently. The same sort of concept is in the manufacturing with the shipbuilding sector. You perfect the design in the virtual world, and then you execute it in the real world. And the same goes for the aerospace industry. You're modeling each and every component of that thing. You're figuring out all the problems, and then you can build it very efficiently. So essentially what we're doing is bringing those same concepts into the construction world. We're building it virtually, and then we're fabricating those pieces and putting them together in real life. And this concept is going to facilitate the prefabrication and the automation and getting those efficiencies and bringing those concepts into our construction sites. So, BIM, as a definition, is essentially just the process to allow AEC professionals to have better tools and insights into designing and constructing projects. So where did that come from? How did we get here? BIM is essentially an evolution of drafting and design. Starting from paper-based drafting tools, AutoCAD came into the scene to basically, as a better version of hand drafting, and now building information modeling is more of an advanced evolution of that process. And originally, model development was primarily for the explicit reason of producing the construction drawings. So the designers will build the model, they'll produce the 2D drawings, and then those 2D drawings will go to site to be built. But what we've seen over the years is those models are much more valuable for many other processes. So not only are they developed in the construction documents, we also use those models for logistics. We use them for scheduling. We pull quantities from the models. We can do advanced fabrication. It provides better collaboration and just general visualization. So, and that's kind of where we use the term VDC, or virtual design and construction, because it's all these other uses of the BIM model or the 3D information for explicit reasons. So we use the models to develop logistics plans to help communicate, how we're going to build things, the phasing and sequencing of our projects. We use the models as a visual tool to link to our schedules. So we have an itemized list of all the elements inside of a model, and we can attach each element to a schedule activity so we can see at what point in time things are going to be happening, what activities are happening. And this is a visual tool to a traditional Gantt chart. And then we have quantities extraction. So now with this itemized list of all these individual objects in the model, they have quantities attached to it and counts of objects, and we can extract that data and use that to better plan and quantify our buildings. And then the other major function of the model is coordination. So now we have a visual tool to put all these different disciplines together and coordinate how they're going to fit. So I'd like to show this image too, because what really has changed. In the top left there, there's that device on the table. I'm sure some of you recognize it, called the light box or whatever. Putting the two paper drawings on top of each other and trying to figure out interferences. So in the other image here, we have a very similar process, but except we have a 3D model. So nothing really has changed. We have the same people are in the room, and we're all staring at a light box, essentially, trying to coordinate the project. But the only thing that's changed is really the tools, right? We're just using more advanced tools with the same people and a similar process. So that kind of brings me to kind of what the core principles are of BIM, of what we're trying to achieve with BIM. Basically, you have the people, you have a process, and then you have the tools, which is also the technology, right? So you need to have these three core principles to make any BIM process work. So I want to talk a little bit about the process in a typical construction management or a bid-builds project. So I kind of break things into like a simplified timeline of key activities that happen in construction. So first, you bid on a job, you win the job. The first thing you want to do is you want to collect the issued for construction Revit files. Just the same way that you would collect the drawings will show up in a roll at your office, you also want to collect the 3D model, right? And then from that point, the next thing is to put the requirements in the scope of work for your subcontractors, so that everyone needs to participate in a 3D modeling coordination process. Once you have put those requirements in, you've awarded your subcontracts, you want to initiate a kickoff meeting with the subtrades to get everyone in the room and set the ground rules for the process. Next is the Bim Execution Plan, where you want to document all of the agreements made at that kickoff meeting. Next, you get right into model coordination, where you're exchanging models, you're coordinating, you're solving issues, and you're creating that complete coordinated model. From there, you can use that model as installation and control. So You have a coordinated model, you have it on your iPad that you can take out to site and use to help installation and controlling where everything goes. And then in the closeout phase is essentially you're collecting all that information you've just created throughout the construction process, and depending on the requirements of the owner or what they want to use that model for, sometimes you're just archiving, collecting and archiving the information, or you're taking it and plugging it into a facilities management system. So I kind of want to look at each of these steps in a bit more detail. So, when it comes to collecting the Revit files, it's no different than, collecting the drawings, right? When the architect is producing the design using a 3D platform like Revit or similar, they're using that to produce the drawings, but they also have the model. So you want to make sure when you collect the drawings, you're also collecting the 3D information. And then putting the Bim requirements in the subcontractor's scope of work. So essentially, it's usually the major subtrades, being the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, fire protection, and structural steel. And in these scopes of work, they can vary from project to project or company to company. But the main things that you want in there are defining what the submittals are, Bim Execution Plan requirements, so essentially participating in the execution plan, what the 3D fabrication model, what the submission requirements are, so format and technicals, what the 3D submission process looks like, and then any ownership and rights of data, sort of liability, limits of liability, if there's any proprietary information. So those are sort of the key things that you want to have in the requirements for your subcontracts. And then at the kickoff meeting, so once you've awarded all your subcontractors, you want to bring everyone in the room together to sort of lay the foundation for the process. So you want to have the BIM coordinator that's taking the lead on the process. You want the architects and the engineers. You want the project managers or coordinators, the field staff, superintendents, field engineers, and then you want all the subcontractors and subtrades. So you bring everyone in the room together, and you discuss the process. You figure out, the frequency of model submissions, what softwares everyone's using. You sort of have that initial, those initial conversations. And then, from that meeting, you develop the BIM Execution Plan, which is essentially the document that that you can reference back to that sort of captures all of those agreements. And in that document, it's got three major sections to it. Essentially, you want to define what the goals and the uses are of the model. So what the intended use is, what you're trying to achieve, and maybe what the deliverables are. The second thing is the process. So you want to define what the collaboration procedures are, what the information exchanges are, and what's the roles and responsibilities of each of the team members. And then third is the supporting infrastructure. So you want to establish what the data requirements are, any quality control measures, technology requirements, computers, hardware, software, and then sometimes what the model structure might be. Are you dividing the models by discipline? Are you dividing the models by floors? That kind of stuff. So you kind of lay out the technicals in that section. But those are the three main topics that you want to discuss in that meeting and then document in this document. So part of that execution plan is defining essentially what the expectations are, right? So this is a bit of a graph of what the level of development is, or sometimes referred to as LOD. And so at each stage of the design development, the models are getting more and more detailed. So in the execution plan, you want to establish those expectations that, at this stage during construction, we want a level 400 fabrication model, and it has to meet that specification. So you know at what point of the project what level of detail each model is going to have, and so everyone's on the same page of what to expect. So that's part of that execution planning. And next is model coordination. So model coordination is really like, the bread and butter of the process. That is, the core of what we're trying to achieve here. And what we do is we're collecting all those models, we're bringing them together in different softwares, and then we're reviewing them to make sure that all the systems fit and they're going to work together. So, example, we're testing out the Revisto platform. They've got a booth downstairs. If anyone wants to learn more about that, they can. But we've been testing this out for over a year now, and we really like how it allows us to track and manage all of the issues we find in the model. So on the side here, so when we create an issue in the Revisto platform, we can easily assign it a status, give it a title, priority, when it was created, give it a deadline, assign it to a person to fix, and then also tag it with other information. So that allows us to know exactly how many issues are outstanding, what their duration is, give it priority if it's critical or trivial, that kind of thing. And it's a very good tool for managing. And once you input all that data, that allow us to get more advanced analytics of where we're at, so we can always see how many issues are created through HVAC, or how many structural steel issues we have, or how many issues are outstanding for a certain subtrade or what have you. And then we can also automate a reporting structure too. So so we can send automated schedule reports of all these clashes. So every Monday morning, it'll send a report to each of the subtrades, only showing a filtered list of their issues. So it's a very handy tool that allows us to really bring a lot of efficiencies into that coordination process. And yeah, it's one of the other critical parts of model coordination is setting up that BIM coordination meeting too. So you want to meet at least once a week, sometimes twice, or you can set that frequency depending on how fast you need to move things along. But you definitely need to have that meeting so you can come together and you can work out those issues in the model. And with the tools and the technology we have, have all these devices here is because people can you set up a WebEx and you could be coordinating in the model with people all over the world, right, through the internet, and they could be sitting at their desk. They can log in, go into the meeting. They don't need to drive an hour each way just to show up to one of these things. They can sit at their desk and participate. So there's a bit of like I break down the coordination meeting process into a few steps here. So essentially, you've got the first step, which is model submissions. So you're going to collect all the models from all the different disciplines and different softwares. So you collect, and then you merge those models together. We merge our models together using Navisworks. And then we publish those models using Revisto. So we collect them individually, we put them together, and then we publish them and distribute them to the rest of the team. The second step is to model review and clash detection. So we're reviewing the model and we're running clash detection reports to find issues. And then we have issue management. So then we create those issues and we filter out which ones are important, which ones are not. And we manage that all in Revisto. So then for step 3, we have our coordination meeting, and we can come to that meeting with a detailed list of all the issues that we need to talk about. And from that meeting, we're either going to solve issues right there in the meeting, or everyone needs to go back to their respective softwares and our model authoring tools and make those corrections. So step number 4, you make the model corrections. And then step number 5 is you resubmit those models. You merge the models again and you publish. and then in step number 6 is validation. So now you're going back to those areas and validating to make sure that those corrections were made. And then you're updating the issue status, and then you meet again to confirm that everything's been cleared. So that's kind of like the sort of the 7-step process. And then this is happening over a duration of time, which could increase or decrease depending on the schedule of the project. And then next is, once you have this coordinated model, you've got it available for installation and control. So all of our field staff have iPads with access to the coordinated model, and they can walk around and make sure that things are getting installed exactly the way that we've coordinated it in the model. So again, this is an integral part of any of our job sites or any of our trailers. We've got our drawings, our standard drawings, but we also have access to the model, and then we use this to discuss and make sure that everyone's on the same page and installing things exactly the way we want them. Yeah, again, like I always hear a few people talking about, great, we have a coordinated model, but how do we make sure that it's getting installed that way? It's just, making that model, giving everybody access to it, and making it kind of front row and center. Because if you create the model and then you put it on a shelf and tuck it away, no one's going to follow it. But if you make sure it's easily accessible and it's right there, then it's going to be, on the front of everyone's mind. It's going to be used more. So with our drawing tables, we make sure we have large touch screens with access to the models and all the digital drawings as well. And that really helps to make sure that everything is installed correctly. Again, we use the last planner system on a lot of our projects, which is essentially critical path work activities for all our subcontractors. And then we have the model there with easy access for everyone, and that helps to make these decisions. So if they're talking about certain work activities that happen in a particular mechanical room, they have the model right there. They can open it up and they can check it out and help make more informed decisions. So this is all part of installation and control, and using that model once we've created the coordination. So yeah, just like a little highlight on a project that we're working on. So we're working on a project in Ottawa. It's Infrastructure Ontario. It's a healthcare facility. It's a bid build and about $50 million. We've got a full-time VDC coordinator on that job that is managing this process and managing all the models. And we've gone through the steps. We've collected the Revit files. We've put the Bim requirements in our subtrade scope of work. We've did the coordination, the kickoff meeting with the subtrades, and we've developed the execution plan. And now we're in model coordination and installation and control. So sort of what that looks like is, we've collected those Revit models from the designers. They come so for instance, the structural steel and concrete, and then that's getting replaced by our fabrication level detail models from our supplier. But for concrete, we're not getting 3D models from our formwork guys. So we keep that design concrete model, and then we replace it with the fabrication. So that gets superseded and upgraded, and they get combined in Navisworks, which gives us the two versions of the model. So essentially, we have an LOD 400 structural steel that's combined with our LOD 300 concrete. And the same thing goes with our mechanical model too. So we receive a mechanical model that includes all of the HVAC piping, fire protection at an LOD 300, which is essentially the design intent. And then with our subcontractors, we get an LOD 400 model, which is a fabrication level quality, and we get that individually from the different subcontractors, and so that's kind of split up into individual things. So we have 6 different models at varying levels of detail from all different sources, and we're putting all those together and merging them in Navisworks. So sort of what that looks like, the VDC coordinator, he's sort of the guy that's orchestrating the whole process, and the model updates are getting submitted to him from the various sources. That's getting combined and published in Revisto. That's getting pushed to the field. And then we have direct communication between all of the parties through the platform as well. So, model updates are coming, and this is a continuous sort of process. Update the model on a weekly basis, gets pushed to site, everyone has the latest and greatest stuff, and they're able to communicate and collaborate through the platforms as well. So yeah, just some examples. Like this is sort of where we're at on site, maybe a few weeks ago, and we've got essentially a 3D representation of exactly what we're planning to install. All the pile caps, grade beams, underground duct banks, piping, and that sort of thing. And we've got that model access right there on the site to help us coordinate all these underground activities. And here's an example of an issue that we find in the model. We can identify it right there, communicate, resolve the issue, escalate it, do what we need to do. And then in this particular issue, we had to go back to the design team, write up an RFI, send that through in that formal documentation process, and tell the designers that there's a problem here. And then the designers come back with a site instruction. They update their drawings and say, no, this is how you fix the problem. So we're proactively solving these issues, while we're in the ground doing this work. We're thinking about how we're installing ductwork and things like that and solving these problems. And just another example of, so while we're doing the underground installation, we're also coordinating all the structural steel shop drawings, because it needs to go to fabrication, and to get delivered on site, we need to have all this stuff coordinated. So we have the mechanical openings in the steel, and we're able to proactively make sure that everything's going to fit. So to talk about, so that's sort of the process during construction, and then I want to talk a bit about what the process looks like during more of a design build structure. So, to go back to that timeline, essentially we have the construction process, but now we have a lot more front end involvement with the BIM models through a design build model. So typically at the RFP stage, the key things that you want to do is you want to review the specifications, review the RFP if there are any requirements from the owner on BIM or what the deliverables are. And the next thing is putting the BIM requirements in the scope of work for the design consultants. So you want to make sure that the design consultants are going to produce a model of the design, and they're going to produce it in a way that's going to be most beneficial for the duration of the project. After contract award, you want to have that kickoff meeting, but you want to have it with the design team, right? And you want to establish the same process, establish the principles and the groundwork for the process. You want to document it in the execution plan. So you want an execution plan for design. And then throughout design development, you can use the models for doing target value design, tracking quantities as the design progresses, and how different design options influence price and budgets. You do model coordination, so you're coordinating the design development models. And then when you get into construction, you put the BIM requirements in the scope of work, and we go through the process that we just discussed. So I'll talk about these in a bit more detail as well. For the BIM kickoff meeting with the consultants, it's a bit different. Like essentially, you want to have a lead BIM coordinator, either from the general contractor or the design consultant team. You want the owner and the client rep there. you need the construction manager, and then you need the prime design consultant and all the design sub-consultants to be at this kickoff meeting. And essentially, similar, you're discussing the groundwork for the process and establishing the roles, responsibilities, and that kind of thing. And then you want to document that all in the execution plan. So you have different execution plan for design, and then you develop a new one for construction when you start to bring in the subcontractors and the other members of the team. And then in target value design, so target value design essentially is a method of extracting quantities from the model at a more rapid rate. So if you make a design change, your quantity list, your bill of quantities is already getting updated automatically. So we use a software called Assemble to give us access to the model and all the quantities. And we can easily create filtered views of specific items we want in the model. So for instance, this is a large renovation that we're doing at a government building. And so we're gutting all the interior walls and we're putting in all new interior walls. So this is a view that is just showing only the interior walls, and then it's color-coded by wall type, right? So you can have a different line item for each wall type, so you can know exactly what your square footage is for each different wall type, and you can easily see that number and extract that information. So once you extract that information, then you can start to visualize it and use it. So here we've sort of graphed what the wall type interior partition wall quantity is for each of the design development stages. So at 90% DD, 100% DD, and then at 95% construction documentation. So we're tracking these quantities throughout the development, and we're seeing how different things impact it. And we're also taking a lot of pressure off of our estimating team and things like that. So they're not having to recount all of this information at every design development submission. Their quantities are essentially just getting updated with the new model submissions. So kind of what that looks like is, we're receiving the Revit files from the design consultants. The VDC coordinator is putting that information together in Assemble. And then we can extract that information directly as an Excel sheet provided to our estimating group. Or we can directly link it to a Power BI dashboard, which we can then share with other project stakeholders or reference right back to the estimating group. So, and we can create a dynamic link or like a live link from Assemble to Power BI. So you're always looking at real-time latest and greatest information of quantities in those design models. So throughout design development, we're also doing model coordination. So model coordination in design is a little different than in construction, because in construction we're working with more detailed fabrication models, but design coordination in during design, you're less concerned with the details and more looking at the higher level issues and the big ticket items than the smaller nitty gritty stuff. So yeah, and especially in the design build, it's great to have that influence on the design, especially for a general contractor, because we're able to influence the design from a constructability perspective, because we can clearly identify what's easier to build than what's not. Because sometimes the architects and engineers don't really understand the practical installation of what they're designing. So it's good to have that ability to provide that feedback to them and influence the design. So when we do go out for tender with our construction documents, we've got a very good design that's not going to be changed much. So here's just an example of how we're finding an issue in 99% CD. So just before issued for construction, we finalize these documents. We're still seeing like cable trays and things going through mechanical shafts and that kind of thing. And then we're able to communicate those problems back to them and they're able to reroute their systems to make sure that it's not gonna work like that. So and essentially what that looks like is we're getting design consultants producing the Revit files. They give us regular model submissions. We're publishing that to Revisto, VDC coordinator, or other members of the project team are providing that coordination and feedback directly to the designers as they're updating the models. So you kind of have this feedback loop of model updates and comments and questions back to the designers, and you're doing this directly through the models. A bit of during design development, you kind of have two major things. You're tracking quantities throughout the design development, but you're also providing feedback on the actual design through the model. And we use these two softwares, is Assemble for quantities and Revisto for collaboration. And this is a continual process throughout design development. And then once you finish that, it's basically you're going right into construction, and you're following the same steps that we talked about earlier, putting the BIM requirements in the subtrade scope of work, doing the kickoff meeting, execution plan, model coordination, installation and control, and project closeout. So that's sort of like, these are the key activities over the duration of a design build project. And then, just to, this is sort of just how to close things off here. Just to bring back to what the core principles are of this whole thing is essentially you have the people with the knowledge and the training, you have the correct processes in place, and then you have the tools and technology that allow you to do these things. And tools and technology are always going to be evolving. They can be replaced or interchanged, but having the people in the process there is the most important thing, and then the tools help us execute that. So that's kind of what I wanted to sort of leave you guys with. And that's kind of what I have right now.